Friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video, we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. The situation is very interesting because now we see that both the Russians, the Ukrainians, and the Americans are trying to outsmart each other. And the situation is very complicated because now it's very difficult to say who is going to become a winner of this game. So what is happening right now? What is a tricky situation we can see right now in front of our screens? First of all, this story has the name of the energy truce. So this information, yesterday in the evening, was confirmed by the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. He confirmed that the energy ceasefire and thanked Donald Trump for it. Thank you to the American side for their efforts to stop attacks on energy supplies at this time, and we hope that America will be able to ensure this. Today we have a statement from the president of the United States. The situation this night and these days, the real situation at our energy facilities in our cities will demonstrate this. So from his words, one can conclude that the ceasefire will take effect tonight. So this is the statement of Zelensky. Basically, he confirmed and thanked the president of the United States of America that he managed to conclude the deal with the Russian Federation not to attack objects of energy infrastructure in Ukraine during the next days. And I would like to remind you that according to information we have, during the next days, we are going to see the worst weather in Ukraine for the entire 2026. We'll see the temperature falls below up to minus 30 degrees Celsius, which will lead, if the Russians attack Ukraine during this period of time, this will lead to complete collapse of the entire energy infrastructure of the city of Kiev, and this can have huge problems. So what was the original plan of the Russian Federation? As we discussed yesterday, the Russians officially didn't announce anything about energy ceasefire and so on. We start just receiving updates from different, first of all, pro-Ukrainian sources, that pro-Russian sources in their chats, in their channels, secret channels, or maybe somewhere else, began publishing updates and information that the Russians received the order not to attack Ukraine, not to attack energy infrastructure, but without timings, without date when this situation finishes. So this is the situation, and the original plan of the Russians was to spread this information among Ukrainians, among the population, and so on. And according to my understanding of the situation, the Russians decided to make this announcement because it's the same as if the Russians announced that Monday comes after Sunday. So nothing special. The Russians announced something that doesn't change the game, that doesn't change the conflict, that doesn't change anything. But according to the Russian plan, the situation was as following. The Russians unofficially announced energy ceasefire. Then the Russians wait for the 1st of February. Then the Russians wait for the results of talks during the 1st of February. And of course, the Russians most likely understood, and they realized that most likely Zelensky and the Ukraine's representatives would reject once again any demand from the Russian side. And most likely the Russians were planning right after this rejection to attack the territory of Ukraine during the night between the 1st and the 2nd of February and to deal significant damage to the entire energy infrastructure of Ukraine. So when talking about the 1st and the 2nd of February, we're talking about the period of time between the Sunday and Monday of upcoming days, which means during the worst day during the winter of 2026. So that was the original plan of the Russian Federation. But for some reason, the president of the United States of America decided to play this game as well. I don't know why did he do this, but yesterday in the evening, the president of the United States of America stated that he personally asked Putin not to carry out strikes on Kiev and a number of other cities. According to Trump, the Russian president agreed. As for this statement, the president of the Russian Federation haven't confirmed. Nobody in the Russian Federation have confirmed that indeed there was a conversation like this. So nobody can confirm this, and we have no proofs. We have just a statement of the president of the United States of America, who probably decided to use the situation that the Russians halted the strikes through the territory of Ukraine, and he decided to earn additional points and to show that he controlled the situation, and he tried probably even to show that he's doing everything he can with the purpose to settle the conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And this is the moment when Zelensky decided to enter the game as well, because Zelensky understands and he knows that during the talks on the 1st of February, most likely Ukraine will reject once again demands from the Russian side, and Zelensky realized that most likely his rejection would lead to a massive attack through the territory of Ukraine. So that is why Zelensky decided to use the President of the United States of America and his statements in his favor. He said that thank you to the American side for the efforts to stop attacks on energy supplies at this time, and we hope that America will be able to ensure this. So he's trying to tell us that there is an agreement, not our agreement, but the agreement between states and the Russian Federation, and Putin personally promised the President of the United States of America that Russia would not attack the territory of Ukraine. And if for some reason the Russian Federation begin attack the territory of Ukraine with missiles and drones, this is going to be not our problem. This is going to be a personal problem between Trump and Putin, which means that Putin promised but didn't do anything that he promised, and he ruined his promises and began attacking. So this is the game of Zelensky. And this morning Zelensky made few more statements, because as you can see, he decided to intensify his game from his side. And this morning the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, stated that if Russia stops its strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, Ukraine will not strike Russia's energy sector. Of course, it is impossible for me to meet with Putin in Moscow. That would be the same as meeting with Putin in Kiev. I publicly invite Putin to Kiev if he dares, of course. I am ready for any format of a leaders summit, but not in Moscow or Belarus. Zelensky stated, and this is the most important statement, Zelensky stated that the February 1st meeting in Abu Dhabi may be postponed due to the situation regarding Iran. We will not give the Donbas and the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant to the Russians without a fight. So this is the most important statement, because now Zelensky understands that there is something like a virtual or mystical agreement between Trump and Putin. Trump made a statement that he had an agreement with the president of Russia, so that is why Zelensky decided probably to postpone this meeting on the 1st of February, because he understands that now the Russians are obliged, mystically obliged, not to attack Ukraine due to agreement with the president of the United States of America. And now he will try to postpone this meeting on the 1st of February, probably for 2 or 3 or 5 or even a week after the worst temperature and the worst weather conditions in the territory of Ukraine, because then Ukraine and Zelensky will not be afraid of anything, because the weather would become comfortable. We're gonna see plus temperature, let's say up higher than 0. And during this period of time, after these frosts that are going to happen between the 1st of February and 4th of February, Ukraine will not be afraid of anything. So this is the game from Zelensky's side, and now it's very interesting to understand and to see what the Russians are going to do with this, because their plans and their original plans seems to be ruined by these maneuvers and by these tricky things from the Ukrainian side and from the American side. But the most important thing from the Russian side, that they still haven't confirmed officially about the existence of any agreement, of any ceasefire between Russia, Ukraine and the United States of America. It seems that the Russians are keeping some doors open for them if everything goes wrong. There was just one statement made by the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov. He stated that a ceasefire, according to Zelensky's scenario, is unacceptable for Russia. So let's wait and see, of course, what is going to happen next, but most likely the scenario is going to be as following. Ukraine most likely will try to postpone the meeting on the 1st of February, saying that there is a critical situation in Iran. Let's have this meeting 10 or 20 days later. The Russians would attack the territory of Ukraine with missiles and drones, dealing a critical damage to energy infrastructure. Zelensky will use this situation that the Russians ruined or broke the energy ceasefire between Russia Russia, Ukraine, and the United States of America, and they will try to manipulate probably with the President of the United States of America on the matter of his personal agreement with the President of the Russian Federation. Of course, because of this situation, the President Trump would be forced probably to give additional supply and support to Zelensky and Ukraine, maybe missiles, maybe something else, because this is like a big game. What the Russians are going to do with this, very difficult to understand, but the stakes are very high right now. As for the previous 24 hours, by the way, the Russians carry out another attack through the territory of Ukraine, and the Russians were using 112 drones. The sources are saying that mainly the Russians were attacking the southern parts of Ukraine, the territory in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Here we can see a drone that was flying above the city of Dnipro, and this information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources. They're saying that the drones, these Russian drones, are attacking the territory of the cities of Zaporozhye and Dnipro during the previous night, and they're doing this right now. Furthermore, we have this very interesting video published by pro-Ukrainian sources, a very heavy explosion around the settlement of Vasilievka, also along a railway station that's along one of the most important supply lines that goes in the direction of the line of combat contact. Another important video is coming from the road M30, and here we can see that according to the author of this video, that the Russians destroyed a vehicle that was transferring fuel closer to the line of combat contact. Here we can see civilians that were passing by this truck with fuel, but as you can see, the truck was destroyed. Furthermore, we have a report that the road Pavlograd-Petropavlovka has become dangerous. Yesterday, the Russians hit 5 vehicles in this road. So the Russians established complete control over the M30 road, and the Russians continue controlling the situation. So the game is becoming very interesting. First of all, we're not talking about the conflict. We're talking about a political game between Zelensky, Trump, and Putin. And it is very interesting to understand who is going to become a winner of this very interesting political battle. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians during the previous 24 hours or 12 hours managed to improve their position significantly. We have 2 huge changes on the ground. The first one is coming from the western Zaporozhye direction. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in this area, and based on this video we have adjusted the map. So this is the situation by the end of the 29th of January, and this is the end of the 30th of January. We have adjusted the map based on the video published by pro-Ukrainian sources. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources adjusted their maps in the area between the villages of Male Sherbaki and Pavlovka. As you can see, they have added or expanded the gray zone, which means that the Russians are keeping advancing in this area, trying to establish complete control over the territory between the villages of Pavlovka and Male Sherbaki. The Russians are tasked to establish complete control over this road, which will improve their logistics before moving further in the eastern direction towards the city of Orekhov itself. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources adjusted their maps on the territory of the former women prison in the area of the city by the name of Maltakmachka. So according to them, the former prison is completely colored as a gray zone, which means that either there are very heavy clashes in this area, or the Russians have already established complete control over the territory. And as for the Zaporozhye direction, the most important update is coming from the settlement by the name of Ternovate. Today, pro-Russian sources published a video. We will not watch the video due to violence and casualties, but according to this video, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Ternovate, and during this video we might see lots of flags, lots of episodes of how Russians were raising their flag through the entire village. So this is the situation by the end of the 29th of January, and this is the situation by the end of the 30th of January. The Russians established complete control control over one of the most important cities on the Ukrainian side of the river of Gaichur, along the railways between the river of Gaichur and the operational space. So this is a very important progress on the ground from the Russian side. Now from these positions, the Russians can keep advancing further in the western direction because Russians entered the operational space, and now they can continue moving further in the western direction with the purpose to move in the direction of the city of Zaporozhye. So one of the most important battles of the winter military campaign has been finished, and this battle finished in the Russian favor. Now let's move further. As for the Dobropolye direction, during the previous 12 hours, small changes were recorded around the village of Novopavlovka. This information was provided by pro-Russian sources. Now let's move further. As for the Konstantinovka direction, the situation in this area remains tense. The Russians shifted their focus towards the northern part of the city of Konstantinovka. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos of how Russians were attacking vehicles and how Russians were attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in this part. But this video, for example, is the most important one because the northern part of the city of Konstantinovka has several parts, and these parts are splits with rivers in this area. In this video we can see that Ukrainians mined another bridge in the northern part of the settlement, and the Russians with FPV drone attacked the explosive below the bridge, and then the bridge, as a result of this attack, was completely destroyed. Obviously this will not affect significantly the logistic, but obviously this attack will worsen the situation of the armored forces of Ukraine in the southern part. So as you can see, this is, for example, the first parts of the city of Konstantinovka. This is the second part, and these two parts are located in the southern part of the settlement. And these two parts are being splitted with this kill zone between these two parts. And now we see that the Russians created the same situation in the northern part. So this is the first parts of the city of Konstantinovka in the northern part, and this is the second one. And these two territories are also being cut by the Russians with explosions and with attacks on the logistic. So 4 parts of the city of Konstantinovka, and the Russians are trying to advance in the southern parts of the settlement. Here we can see another video published by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see a Russian drone flying above the city of Konstantinovka and filming the current situation on the ground. As you can see, lots of damaged buildings, lots of damaged constructions, and which you can see that step by step the city of Konstantinovka is being reduced to ruins. Now let's talk about the Slaviansk direction. During the previous 12 hours, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, additional gray zones were added along the M30 road, which means that the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their position significantly, and that first sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armored forces of the Russian Federation are already trying to improve their positions, and there is a build-up process around the second defense layer, which includes the villages like Lipovka, Dibrova, Fedorovka Druga, and Nikiforovka. So which means that most likely in coming days the battle for the first defense layer is going to be finished, and the Russians will try to answer the second one. As for the Liman direction, now changes. As for the Kupiansk direction, the situation remains the same. As for the northern directions, during the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground we received from the southeastern direction of the city of Sumy. This video, for example, was published by pro-Russian sources, and the Russians are saying that the Russians managed to discover the air defense forces of the armored forces of Ukraine, and when they discovered them, the Russians attacked these positions with aviation. As for the changes on the ground, they are coming from the area of the village of Ryasne. So these are the changes between the dates. The Russians, according to information we have, improved their positions to the west of the settlement of Grabovske, and additional gray zone was added by pro-Ukrainian sources to the south of the settlement of Ryasne. So according to this gray zone, the Russians, by the beginning of the 30th of January of 2026, established complete control over these 3 lines and over these fields. So this territory most likely is already under complete control of the armored forces of the Russian Federation, which see that the settlement of Ryasny was already semi-encircled by the Russians, which means that the battle for the village itself is going to start very soon. At the same time, during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates from the Belgorod direction. Several pro-Russian sources stated that the armored forces of Ukraine concentrated huge forces, fresh forces, along the border with the Belgorod region, and some pro-Russian sources stated that Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of another offensive operation with the purpose to answer the Belgorod region and to probably establish control over the villages. We added this area of concentration of Ukrainian troops softly. Maybe this is not the area, maybe the Ukrainians concentrated their troops somewhere here, but the most important thing that, as the chief of the general staff of the armored forces of Ukraine, Syrsky, stated, the Ukrainians will not be able to win in defense, and the Ukrainians will try to carry out offensive operation in future. As the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, stated today, the Ukrainians are not going to give up the Donbas and the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant to the Russians without a fight, which means that the fight is going to happen very soon. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the game, in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day.